All right, folks, it is 1 p.m. and I would like to welcome you to session 4A for new cultivar releases from the University of Florida. Our speaker today is Mr. John Beuttenmuller from the Florida Foundation of Seed Producers. Mr. Beuttenmuller is the Executive Director of the Florida Foundation Seed Producers Incorporated, which is a Florida nonprofit corporation and direct support organization of the University of Florida. FFSP is responsible for the licensing of plant variety inventions developed by faculty plant breeders within the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. As the Executive Director of FFSP, John oversees FFSP's 650-acre foundation seed stock farm and seed processing facilities in Marianna, Florida, as well as the licensing of new cultivars developed and released by UF IFAS plant breeders in over 50 different crop species. FFSP averages over 34 new plant variety disclosures each year. So before I turn it over to Mr. Beuttenmuller, a quick few home housekeeping tips. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we will reserve 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for all facilitator questions. If you can, please minimize your use of the chat box as we want to keep track of the questions that are going to be given to the presenter at the end of the presentation. And without further ado, I turn it over to Mr. John Beuttenmuller.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining today. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to present to such an engaged and active group. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity. Hopefully, we may have maybe 10 or 15 minutes for questions, depending upon how long it takes me to get through my slide deck, but definitely want to leave some time for that. As was mentioned, my name is John Beuttenmuller, and I work with Florida Foundation Seed Producers, and I wanted to start by just giving you a brief overview of our organization, the history, and the connection to the University of Florida, and what we do as an organization in the development and release of new plant varieties. So our group actually was founded in 1943 as the Florida Crop Improvement Association to work to bring in new crops, new varieties that may be well adapted to Florida's climate and soils. The group was renamed in 1957 to Florida Foundation Seed Producers. And the purpose of the organization established at that time was to provide to producers in Florida seeds and seed stocks of the best known varieties that are adapted to Florida's climate and soils. And naturally, in doing that, the organization worked really hand in glove with the Florida Agricultural Experiment Station. And it was really around that time that plant breeding as a discipline began to grow. And so there was a natural connection to UF from the beginning. In 1979, the group formally became a direct support organization, or DSO, of the University of Florida. And DSOs serve to receive, hold, and invest or administer property and to make expenditures to or for the benefit of UF. So other direct support organizations affiliated with UF would be the University of Florida Foundation that handles all of the investments and endowments, the University of Florida Research Foundation that handles other intellectual property that's not comprised of plant varieties or germplasm, Gator Boosters, the University Athletic Association, and so on. So they're separate organizations that serve to fulfill a purpose and mission that is for the benefit of the university, but is outside of the lines of what you would typically think in a higher education research institution. In terms of our governance, we have a 13-member board of directors. 9 board seats are held by representatives of the industry, so seed company representatives, nursery representatives, and so forth. The IFAS Dean for Research and Dean for Extension are both board members. And there's also a designee of the president and a designee of the University of Florida Board of Trustees. So a lot of people hear the name Florida Foundation Seed Producers and they think, well, it's a nonprofit. Foundation just it refers to the role of the organization as a nonprofit, but actually the foundation in our name it references foundation seed. So as plant breeders develop new varieties, they will through their trial and evaluation as experimental lines progress, they will increase seed or stock, plant stock of a new variety in anticipation of release. This breeder seed is then planted to produce foundation seed. Foundation seed is grown by our organization, and both directly and through contract growers, where it's harvested, processed, cleaned, treated, packaged, and then sold. The breeder foundation registered certified, this production of certified seed is governed by the Association of Official Seed Certifying Agencies, or AOSCA. And so in each of these generations, you have really exponential increase of volume. So if a breeder developed a new variety and had 2 pounds of seed, there's no way for that 2 pounds of seed to make it to the industry without going through a process of increase. And so this is the role of our organization in terms of crops that have certified seed programs. And in the case of Florida and Alabama, the Southern Seed Certification Association is the designated and authorized agency that is a member of AOSCA for seed certification purposes. Today we have our foundation seed stock farm in Marianna, adjacent to the NFREC there in Marianna, and we have an additional office in Gainesville, Florida. And there's really 2 main functions of our organization: production, as I mentioned, and the second being the licensing, so technology transfer and intellectual property protection related to new plant varieties and germplasm released by plant breeders from the University of Florida. The University of Florida's intellectual property policy is very unique in that there's 2 organizations that work to serve a technology transfer role. Our group for plant germplasm and cultivars, and then all other inventions are handled through UF Innovate, the Tech Licensing Office, which is under the umbrella of the University of Florida Research Foundation. UF, generally speaking, is very widely recognized for its success in licensing impactful inventions and discoveries, and not just plant varieties. I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Centricon system, as well as Gatorade. For royalties generated through plant variety licensing, UF has the most aggressive reinvestment policy or royalty return policy for plant breeding. And so there is a different distribution policy for all other inventions, but you can see here that 70% of royalties go back to support the developing plant breeders research program. If the policy was followed through UF Innovate and UFRF, only 12.5% of royalties are returned to the program that developed that invention. And this policy was put into place in the early 90s to create a mechanism to sustain plant breeding programs at UF IFAS for the benefit of our stakeholders long term. And like I mentioned, it is the most aggressive reinvestment policy out of any land grant institution, and UF is really the envy of other land grants because of the amount of royalties that go back to support breeding programs. Generally speaking, here's a kind of a flow chart that shows the process of release and development. So a PI, a plant breeder, is working to develop new germplasm, evaluates that germplasm both internally and oftentimes with third-party grower cooperators. They then go through an internal cultivar release process where The first step is a peer review process where the data is reviewed. So, for example, if a new variety claims resistance to a certain disease or that it's non-invasive and sterile, the data to support those claims are evaluated at that step. Once approved by this peer review committee, it goes to the IFAS-wide Cultivar Release Committee, and then is formally released by IFAS. It's at that point where we have a new variety that our organization, Florida Foundation Seed, is involved, and we will then work with seed companies, nurseries, and so forth to license those varieties and the patents or intellectual property protection that we have to those varieties. And then when those varieties are sold by these seed companies and nurseries, royalties are returned that are then in turn reinvested back into the plant breeding programs, which fuels the development of the next best variety. And so this royalty return process, as I mentioned, has provided long-term support for several plant breeding programs. It's allowed IFAS to hire new plant breeding faculty and also to fill plant breeding positions as a breeder may retire. It's also used to support early career faculty, and I'll get into highlighting some of what's coming down the pipeline in terms of new crops for Florida. Just this fall, the University of Florida announced and has its first class of a cohort of students that will receive their PhD degree in plant breeding. Previously, if you were interested in studying plant breeding at UF, you would work with a breeder within an academic department such as agronomy or horticultural sciences, but your PhD would be in horticultural sciences. And so with this new program, graduates will graduate with a degree in plant breeding, a PhD in plant breeding, which we believe will be very helpful in attracting the best talent out there in terms of graduate students. The royalty program also helps to allow for the exploration of new crops and investigating new opportunities in the future, and I'll touch on that as well. When you look at the faculty plant breeders within IFAS, there's 27 different plant breeders and collaborating geneticists across 3 academic departments and 1 school. A diverse group with genetically improving more than 50 different plant species, and a very productive group in the applied nature in the release of cultivars, with 255 cultivars being released over the past 10 years. As many of you know and are aware, Florida's agricultural industries are very diverse. A lot of specialty crops grown within the state, and with these crops being specialty crops, there aren't the same commercial breeding programs in that space that oftentimes you would see in the case of corn, cotton, soybeans, crops that are really broadly grown. And so having these plant breeding programs at IFAS is really critical to supporting our stakeholders and developing new germplasm. And it also goes without saying that the environment that we have here in Florida is very challenging in terms of pests and disease and so forth. Here's just a map showing the spread of the different plant breeding programs. So while some plant breeders are based in Gainesville, many of them are based at the research and education centers across the state, and oftentimes they're strategically located where those industries are. So, for example, the citrus breeding program, 2 of the 3 breeders are based at the Citrus Research and Education Center in Lake Alfred. Here's a chart showing the cultivar releases from IFAS over time, and so you can see there's some variability here, but you can see just the number of cultivars released and the productivity of the plant breeding programs. So diving into recent cultivar releases, I've prepared kind of a snapshot of different varieties and broken them out into 3 groups: ornamentals and edible crops, turf grass, and then fruit and vegetable crops. Obviously, there are agronomic row crops and forages released, but I'm not presenting those today. And I would also say I'm not presenting all of the ornamentals, turf grass, and fruit and veg crops either. This is just a snapshot of some of the newest material that has been released. But if there are questions about wanting to know, particular information about certain releases in a particular crop that I haven't touched on, or additional releases from a crop that I have touched on, I've provided my contact information on my last slide, and certainly would be glad to discuss with anybody if I haven't touched on something that you wanted to hear about. So the Coleus program, many of you are probably familiar, under the direction of Dr. David Clark within the Environmental Horticulture Department, has been incredibly successful in developing new Coleus varieties. The first barrier, or first challenge, is that the Coleus really like to set seed, and under high heat, they oftentimes will set seed more quickly, but as Coleus set seed, the foliage quality, or the ornamental quality of those plants, often decline because the plant begins to use resources to produce seed and not to produce foliage. So the real breakthrough that Dr. Clark early on had in this program was selecting for delayed flowering, late flowering, or oftentimes just plants that won't flower. So that was the first selection criteria, and as the program has developed, you'll see a lot of varieties with really novel colors, novel leaf shape, unique plant growth habit. And so once the late flowering barrier was broken down, it's really created an opportunity for unique varieties. And so this variety, L'Afrique, has very unique foliage with an excellent compact habit, and can withstand extreme heat when provided part shade. This variety is licensed to Dooman Orange, and so all of the Coleus varieties, I've put who they're licensed to. These companies that we've licensed for Coleus are really cutting producers, so they will sell cuttings to nursery growers, and those growers would then produce the plants and then sell to garden centers, big box stores. It's very common to see a lot of the UF Coleus varieties in Lowe's and Home Depot and so forth, and then also independent garden centers as well. So this one is licensed to Dooman Orange. Another new Coleus variety, Flamethrower Cajun Spice. Flamethrower is a series really that Ball has developed to categorize this really unique leaf shape. So you can see kind of like a flamethrower, and Cajun Spice, obviously a kind of a tribute to the unique coloring on this variety and the unique shaped leaves. And this is another excellent variety that thrives in both full sun and shade. This one's licensed to Ball Horticulture. Another recent release out of the Coleus program is Dragon Heart. You can see this is a bit different than the Flamethrower Cajun Spice. Really unique, bright colors, and a unique leaf pattern. This one as well thrives in both full sun and shade. Stained Glass Works, Eruption. So Stained Glass Works is a series of Dooman, and so Eruption is the name of this variety. It's a very compact plant with an upright and spreading habit, and you can see that this variety has larger leaves, than some of the previous varieties presented, with really vibrant colors. You can see the kind of the pink that really explodes off of these leaves, contrasted with the lime edge. This one is licensed to Doom and Orange as well. Limewire is another new release out of the Coleus program. Very compact plant, once again with an upright spreading habit. Really unique leaf shape here, so you can see the ruffled edges around the margins of the leaves. This one really has great branching, which doesn't require the variety to be pinched back, to promote branching. This is licensed to Ball as well. Another one is Copperhead, a compact plant, once again with an upright spreading habit. Really striking red-orange foliage with once again ruffled leaves. And so I mentioned early on the Coleus program. All of these would be really late flowering or would not flower. And so you can see the breeding targets of this program has been to develop novel colors, novel mix of colors, and also different plant habit and form, as well as leaf shape and texture. Another Coleus, Spitfire, one licensed to Ball. This is a very compact variety. You can see it in the picture on the right. It's almost referred to as a micro Coleus. So it's very very compact, very dense, an excellent pot plant, as well as a plant that could be used in combinations with plants of other species. And you've seen more and more of that. Coleus plays well with other plants. And so you'll see oftentimes Coleus in mixed plantings and so forth. But really unique leaf shape here, vibrant pink and lime green edge. This one is one of my favorites, licensed to Ball. Vulcan is another Coleus release, very eye-popping red, and the green leaf margin really helps that red pop and stand out more. Once again, a unique leaf shape, and it holds the red color in full sun. Sometimes red Coleus tend to get washed out or start to fade a bit when they're in full sun, but this particular variety, Vulcan, has performed very well in full sun. This is licensed to Ball as well. I've provided some links here, and I believe my presentation will be shared with some resources. So this is just a link to information about the Coleus breeding program, as well as some IFAS links to just speak about Coleus. And once again, the Coleus breeder is Dr. David Clark, based in Gainesville in the Environmental Horticulture Department. Switching gears to a different crop, but also staying in ornamentals, caladiums, as many of you know, the Lake Placid Sebring area is the caladium capital of the world. A very strong industry there, and it's really amazing to see just the sheer number of caladium varieties. Caladium varieties generally have pretty good staying power in the market. A lot of the varieties grown and sold have been around for 30 or 40 years, but also that presents a great opportunity in breeding, either for varieties that have higher tuber yields, so more productive for the caladium growers that produce the bulbs, unique colors, leaf shape, disease resistant, so forth. So the first variety shown here is Lava Glow, that has excellent leaf color and sun tolerance. Once again, sometimes caladiums, when grown in a full sun setting, can wash out and also be stressed, where the foliage quality will decrease over time. And so that's been one of the big targets of the Caladium program under Dr. Zenao Deng at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center in Balm. This variety also does perform well in shade. In terms of caladiums, it's a bit different. In the caladiums they are tuber propagated, and so we will work with caladium growers, and caladium growers oftentimes certain growers will sell direct. They'll sell tubers direct to consumers, but the majority of their business is wholesale to then where bulbs are sold to nursery growers, where nursery growers will plant those bulbs and pot them up and then sell them through garden centers and so forth. This particular variety, Lava Glow, new variety, is licensed to Bates Sons and Daughters and Florida Boys Caladiums, which is a company that's affiliated with Heartland Caladium. So Florida Boys Caladiums and Heartland Caladiums are the same company. Another new caladium variety, Dot's Delight. This is a lance leaf variety with white veins and light pink spots on the leaves. There's a variety, Frida Hempel, that is an industry standard that is susceptible to leaf spot diseases. And so this particular variety is very promising in that it has excellent resistance to leaf spot diseases. So once again, providing a more attractive plant throughout the growing season. This one is currently licensed to Bates Sons and Daughters. Here are links to a couple caladium resources, an EDIS publication, as well as a gardening solutions focused on caladiums. And once again, the caladium breeder is Dr. Zenao Deng, based at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. Dr. Deng also has a Lantana breeding program. Some of you may have heard about the newly released Lantana. There's 3 new Lantanas. As many of you may know, Lantana is considered invasive, and so in the state of Florida. And so Dr. Deng has been working to develop sterile Lantanas. So when I say sterile, I mean those that won't set seed or won't set seed that are viable, and also those that won't shed pollen, or at least viable pollen, so that both the seeds as they're dispersed won't germinate and spread, and then the pollen as insects transmit it won't hybridize with other Lantana. So the first one presented here is Bloomify Red. Very nice ball-shaped habit Lantana. It's medium vigorous. And as I mentioned, it's sterile. It will not produce viable seed and pollen. This particular variety is licensed to Ball, and similar with Coleus, Ball will produce cuttings of the Lantana, and then these cuttings are sold to nursery growers to produce and then sell plants. Actually, all 3 Lantana were readily available both in independent garden centers this past spring, as well as big box stores throughout Florida. So very encouraging to see, and these have really done well. The next Lantana is Bloomify Rose. Once again, a nice ball-shaped habit, medium vigorous, different flower color than Bloomify Red. You can see here, once again, sterile and will not produce viable seed or pollen. And this one is licensed to Ball Horticulture as well. The third Lantana is Luscious Royal Red Zone. This is a red flower Lantana with dark foliage. It is very heat tolerant. And once again, as with the other 2, they are sterile and do not produce viable seed or pollen. This one is licensed to proven winners. And once again, this has been sold throughout independent garden centers and box stores throughout Florida. Here are some additional Lantana resources, NEDIS publication, as well as a extension gardening solutions publication. And these publications really talk about the process of developing sterile Lantana and why that is so important in Florida. Changing to edibles, I believe that Dr. David Clark has talked to this group in the past, but the Amazel basil, Dr. Clark, in addition to Coleus, has a basil breeding program. And Amazel basil was the first release out of this program. This is a very vigorous plant that was really selected for basil downy mildew resistance. Basil downy mildew is very virulent and has caused a lot of economic harm in the production of basil, as well as in the home garden setting, not leading to productive or producing a lot of leaves. And so this resistance is really the hallmark of this variety. But it's also seed sterile, meaning that it produces more leaves and shoots and doesn't take a lot of energy once again into flowering and setting seed, which oftentimes in basil, when they do flower and set seed, a lot of the lower leaves will fall off and the plant's resources go to seed production and not producing more leaves and shoots. So Amazel is licensed to proven winners. Once again, has been very successful and is widely available. Here are some resources for basil. Once again, the breeder working in basil is Dr. David Clark. Switching gears to turf grass, the new St. Augustine release from the University of Florida is Citra Blue. St. Augustine has naturally has a deep blue-green color and very good disease resistance. Sometimes these photos in PowerPoint don't show a contrast as well as they should, but you can see here in this picture on the right, in the foreground here, this is Citra Blue, and you can see other St. Augustine varieties around that don't have that dark deep green color. And so, you know, the thinking is that on a lighter St. Augustine, a homeowner may be more apt to apply fertilizer, and Citra Blue is very efficient in that it holds this dark, deep green color naturally. Really, it has very good shade tolerance and less vertical growth than Floratam, which is the predominant St. Augustine variety grown and sold throughout the state of Florida. So this picture on the left here, you can see Citra Blue has more of a lateral or horizontal growth, whereas Floratam is more upright. And so, you know, definitely reduce mowing frequency in terms of Floratam would be Citra Blue. This variety is licensed to the turf grass producers of Florida and marketed through Sod Solutions. And there are sod producers throughout the state actively producing and selling Citra Blue. It had a really good season here in 2021, and sod farms are continuing to increase production based on the demand. The second recent release from the turf grass breeding program is the zoysia grass variety. This has been called Citra Zoy. It's a finer textured zoysia grass than many commercially available zoysia grass varieties. You can see in the picture on the right here, Citra zoy is a hybrid between the zoysia matrella and zoysia japonica. And so you can see it is intermediate, with matrellas generally being very fine bladed, japonica types being more coarse or wider bladed, and Citra zoy it kind of falls in the middle here. It's a very nice textured grass, and this was selected for its drought response and large patch tolerance. Large patch being a disease of concern in turf grass, in particularly zoysia grass. This is licensed as well to Sod Solutions with sub-licenses to turfgrass producers of Florida. And this is Citra zoy. In terms of volume of Citra zoy, 2021 has really been a year of farms building up their stock. So they've been provided foundation stock to then increase the amount of material of Citra zoy. So 2021 has really been a ramp up year for Citra zoy, but more volume will be available for sale come 2022. Here are some links, or link to UF-IFA's turfgrass resource and the turfgrass breeders, Dr. Kevin Kenworthy, within the agronomy department based in Gainesville. Switching gears to fruit and vegetables, there's a new blueberry release that has been targeted actually to more of a home garden situation. It's called Hello Darlin', and it's an early blooming variety that has compact and dense foliage. And the unique thing about it is that the foliage turns really a dark red in the fall as temperatures start to get cooler. And so not only does it have high yields of very good fruit in the spring, the plant also has a very nice ornamental quality with the foliage in the fall. This has been licensed to PDSI, or Plant Development Services Incorporated, and has been entered in and will be sold under the Southern Living Plant Collection umbrella. That's Hello Darlin'. Another recent blueberry release, Sentinel. This is really more of a commercial variety, but a new variety out of the blueberry breeding program. Very vigorous plant, early season, high yields, anywhere between 8 to 16 pounds per plant, which is excellent in terms of yield per plant in Florida. It's well adapted to north central Florida and central Florida, although I would say that the yields in north central Florida have been closer to that 16 pounds per plant range. Excuse me. And in central Florida have been closer to the 8 pounds per plant. In terms of blueberries for commercial production, we license individual blueberry nurseries throughout the state and the Southeast directly. You can visit our website, ffsp.net, to obtain a listing of the individual nurseries licensed to sell blueberry varieties. Here are some links to blueberry resources. Once again, I don't expect you to write these down. We'll distribute these out. And the blueberry breeder is Dr. Patricio Munoz in Horticultural Sciences in Gainesville. Switching gears to strawberry, Florida Brilliance is one of the newest releases from the Florida Strawberry Breeding Program. Of particular importance to the Florida strawberry industry is early season yields. Oftentimes that's when price for growers is at its highest, and part of that is supply and demand. But this particular variety has exhibited or shown the highest early yields of any UF variety to date. Has a very attractive fruit with good flavor. This variety is licensed to the Florida Strawberry Patent Service Corporation, which is a sister organization of the Florida Strawberry Growers Association. This group then sublicenses individual nurseries. Majority of them are based in Canada and North Carolina to propagate plants that are then produced and sold to growers in Florida. Some of you may have seen, I apologize for the quality of this one image in the middle, but last year there was a kind of a soft release, I guess you could say, of the Florida Pearl. This is a white strawberry, so very unique. Actually, white strawberries are pretty common in countries such as Japan, but this program to develop a white strawberry well adapted to Florida started about 9 years ago to see if it would be possible to produce a white strawberry in Florida. This particular variety has a hint of a pineapple aroma, so it tastes like a strawberry, but it does have some unique notes and flavors. A lot of people will ask, well, how do you know when it's ripe, right? Because on you go back and look at brilliance, you can see strawberries, start white and then they begin to color up, and then once the red color reaches the top of the shoulders of the berry, it's ripe. This particular variety, it forms a pink blush, and then the achenes, or the areas where the seed are on strawberries, the achenes will turn red as well. So that a little bit harder to harvest and know that you're picking a ripe berry. But this variety in particular, picking it when it's ripe is critical, because the flavor on overripe berries isn't as good. Once again, this is licensed to the Florida Strawberry Patent Service Corporation, and nurseries. There will be more volume going in that has actually just been planted for production this winter and early spring. And there's some really unique things. You can imagine having a mixed display of white berries and red berries. You can even imagine a red, white, and blue, a red strawberry, white strawberry, and some Florida blueberries mixed in together. And so there's a lot of unique attributes to this variety. Obviously, a lot of people, chefs and food service as well, really interested in what they may be able to create with such a unique product. So that's Florida Pearl. Here's some links to some resources for strawberries. And the breeders, Dr. Vance Whitaker and Dr. Songhee Lee, both with horticultural sciences based at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. Looking at tomato, 2 tomatoes that have been released, really targeting the home garden market, Garden Gem and Garden Treasure. This is Garden Gem. It's a semi-determinate tomato that's snack size, so not as small as a cherry tomato, but still would be classified as snack size tomato with true heirloom taste. This has been licensed to proven winners. Garden Treasure is an indeterminate slicer type tomato, so bigger than the Garden Gem. Once again, selective for flavor and taste. Both of these have parentage of heirloom varieties in them. So this is something that Dr. Harry Klee in Gainesville has been working on, is bringing heirloom flavor and taste back into tomatoes. And both of these have been released for the home garden market. Garden Treasure, once again, is licensed to proven winners, and both of these are under their Tempting Tomatoes brand, both Garden Gem and Garden Treasure. The third tomato should be no stranger. It's not necessarily new, but one of our flagship varieties, the Tasty Lee brand tomato, high flavor, high lycopene, vine ripe tomato with a very attractive deep red internal color. And this continues to be a very successful variety and program. And so this particular variety is licensed to Bijou Seeds. Here are some links to tomato resources, the breeders and geneticists, Dr. Sam Hutton at Gulf Coast Research and Education Center, Dr. Harry Klee, based in Gainesville and Hort Science, and Dr. Tong Gyan Lee of Hort Science, based in at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center in Balm. Switching gears to citrus, there are two varieties of citrus that we will or soon be launching a citrus dooryard program, a program really designed to promote two varieties for use in the dooryard. Obviously, HLB or citrus greening is a huge issue in Florida. This particular variety, Sugar Bell, is a very high flavor mandarin hybrid that ripens in November and December. It has excellent appearance, a really deep dark orange color. And this variety has been shown to be less susceptible to HLB over time. So it's not resistant to HLB or citrus greening. LB89 will, will be impacted and affected by greening. But it has just shown a little more resilience to hang in there and continue to produce despite HLB. This variety is licensed to NVDMC, and then they sublicense nurseries to propagate and sell trees. As I mentioned, this variety will be highlighted next year in this new dooryard program to promote IFAS citrus varieties for use in the dooryard. The second variety as part of this dooryard program is OLL4. This is a round orange or a typical juice or processing orange. This variety has excellent internal and external color, relatively easy to peel, excellent juice color, and it maintains quality into the summer. So a really exciting orange variety. Once again, this will be part of this dooryard program announced for 2022. This variety we have licensed directly to Florida citrus nurseries, so a listing of those nurseries licensed to propagate and sell trees are available on our website. Here are some links to citrus resources and a listing of the citrus breeders, Dr. Jose Chaparro, based in Gainesville, and Drs. Gamitter and Grosser, both based at the CREC in Lake Alfred. A lot of people say, what's new, what's next, what's coming? Over the past decade, there's been a lot of new plant breeders that have been hired at UF. While not a new breeder, the first one listed is Dr. Zanao Dang at Gulf Coast. He is working on developing blackberries well adapted to Florida. So stay tuned. I think we're very close over the next 2 or 3 years to start to have some blackberry variety options in Florida. Dr. Manjul Dutt is working to develop finger limes, and we will have a couple new releases of finger limes coming out next year. Dr. Herman Sandoya, based at EREC in Belglade, is working on lettuce. Dr. Alfred Huo in ornamentals at the Mid-Florida Research and Education Center in Apopka is working on breeding in heat tolerance to a lot of ornamentals that traditionally haven't been able to be successfully grown in Florida. Dr. Bala Rathanasabapathy, he's referred to as Dr. Saba, is based in Gainesville. He's working to improve peppers, both in unique colors, shapes, and also focusing on nematode resistance in peppers. Dr. Marcio Resende in sweet corn has been working to improve sweet corn, and so we anticipate some new sweet corn hybrids over the next several years. Dr. Miru at Trek is working in tropical pumpkins. So many are familiar with calabaza squash. And Dr. Alan Chambers is another new faculty hire at the Tropical Research and Education Center in Homestead, working on tropical fruits. So a wide diversity of species, but mango, banana, papaya, vanilla, passion fruit, and avocado. So a lot of interesting crops here that we are excited about, because they're areas where in several of these there has been work in the past, but it has been some time, and so a lot of opportunity and excitement for the development of new crops for Florida. I did want to highlight as well, this is the end of my slide, but there's in 2020, a CDIP program was announced. It's an internal funding program within IFAS to fund faculty that to establish teams to alleviate choke points in the development of new emerging enterprises in Florida. We always ask, what is the next blueberry? What is the next breakthrough? And what's going to be needed to develop a new industry in Florida? So you can see I've listed the different projects that are germane or pertinent to plant breeding: the Florida malting barley project, a leafy vegetables product focusing on lettuce in protected agriculture, specialty pumpkins with Dr. Miru, sweet potato with Dr. Grabau, Florida superfoods, ginger, turmeric, and camellia tea. So some interesting new crops with Dr. Paul Fisher in Gainesville. Finger lime with Dr. Dutt, and blackberries, as I mentioned, with Dr. Dang. So this program is we're very excited about. Sorry, one more. Dr. Alan Chambers with vanilla at Trek. And so as I'd started this program, we're very excited because this is kind of the foundation or building blocks for some new enterprises or new frontiers that hold promise for us here in Florida. Do also want to give a plug. Our organization created a plant breeding endowment to help support plant breeding at IFAS, and just provided a link to that endowment. Several years ago, the Florida Foundation Seed Board of Directors made $1 million pledge to this endowment, and we're well on our way in fulfilling that pledge. But I would just like to emphasize that these breeding programs are very resource intensive. They're not breeding projects that you can just start and stop as funding becomes available. You really need a consistent funding source to help these programs grow and sustain themselves into the future. So that's the end of my presentation. I've put my email address here, as well as our link to our website, and we will make this presentation available. But I will go ahead and stop presenting and be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, John. So I was taking notes out of the chat, and we currently have 12 questions. So we're going to hop right into it. So one question was, does the program focus on hybrids, or is GMO also practiced? And if yes, for the latter, what is the focus?
So to date, there have been no GMOs released by IFAS. All of the new varieties released to date have been developed through conventional breeding practice. So, selecting parent A and parent B, crossing them, and then selecting offspring. There are GMO projects going on. Obviously, one of the big challenge in GMO is the cost to bring a GMO to market. So you have to go through FDA, EPA, APHIS deregulation, and the cost estimated to do that is between $10 to $100 million. And so you can imagine the barrier in bringing a new GM product to marketing. There are new breeding techniques, namely gene editing, that are being explored, but that is a new frontier currently. But hopefully I answered that question.
All right. Can Hello Darling and Florida Brilliance grow in Southwest Florida?
Florida Brilliance certainly could. Florida Darling or Hello Darling may be a bit challenged in terms of its chill. And so, blueberries require a certain amount of chill hours in order to flower and then fruit. And that is something I can get some additional information on to provide the exact area of adaptation for that variety.
Okay. Are the Coleus under patent, so we are unable to propagate them for sales?
Yes, that is correct. The Coleus are patented, and so if there is a desire to sell Coleus, liners or cuttings can be purchased from Ball or Duman, our licensees. And I know a lot of these groups actually are very supportive of master gardener plant sales and so forth. So I'm sure that there would be a lot of opportunity for their willingness to participate and to help those types of things.
Okay. Will the Florida Pearl be available for residents as well as avocados in North Florida?
Florida Pearl, yes. Currently, as I mentioned, last year was a soft launch. Plant materials being bulked up and increased. Currently, the demand from commercial growers on Florida Pearl outpaces the supply, but we do anticipate having Florida Pearl made available for the home garden down the road.
Okay. Have there been any reports back on potential negatives in shipping or store arrival of the Tasty Lee tomatoes?
It's always a challenge. Obviously in agriculture, you're not working in manufacturing. And so, you're always pressed, especially with a branded product like that, to have consistent supply year round. And so you can imagine at retailers, you can't just come in and out for a couple of weeks and then come back in, take a month off and come back in. So one thing in the Tasty Lee program that Bijou has been working on is diversifying the number of growers and location of the growers to ensure supply as well as quality.
Okay. In the case of the Lantana, how does this affect the pollinators?
That's a good question. I actually had some of the Bloomify that I bought at Lowe's this past year. The pollinators are definitely attracted to them. It's a bit out of my area to determine, what the long term or kind of impact is beyond that. But we can dig into that and find out to determine what it is. But I know that certainly pollinators are still attracted to these plants.
All right, so we're going to go with two more questions, possibly three. So one is, how can units or MGB programs participate in variety trial studies at their unit offices? Is that even possible?
Yes, absolutely. And it's actually one of the things we've talked about as part of the Citrus Dooryard initiative. We will be providing, engaging. We had a Master Gardener webinar, I believe, about 6 weeks ago, to determine what we could do to engage the Master Gardener community. And if there are desires in particular crops and so forth, feel free to reach out to me or to the plant breeders directly. The more opportunities that we have to connect with groups such as the Master Gardener group, it's an excellent opportunity, and we really value that.
All right, and then the last question, which I believe you already answered, was explaining about GMO and GEO and how they're related to these new plants.
Okay, so GMO and what was the other?
GEO.
GEO. So all of these plants to date, as I mentioned, have all been developed through conventional breeding. We have not released, IFAS hasn't released any varieties that have been developed using GM or genetically modified practices or gene editing. Gene editing, as I mentioned, is a new frontier. and time will tell in terms of if and when we will have varieties that have been developed through those methods. But certainly, if and when that time comes, that will be clearly communicated.
All right. Well, again, we want to thank John for all his wonderful knowledge that you shared with us. It is currently 2:00, so that is the end of our session. So, folks, if we didn't get to your question today, that's fine. We'll go ahead and send John an email of questions. But at this time, please go ahead and transition to sessions 5A, 5B, and 5C. Refer back to your agenda, and we are good to go. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Everyone. Make sure you click the red leave button to leave and then click on the agenda to go to your next session.